And good evening, welcome to another edition of Life is People. Well, before we go any further, we're going to have, I'm really looking forward to tonight's conversation with you, Miriam, but before we go to love, we wanted to sort of start this off with a piece of your prose, because we haven't really spoken about prose anymore. So I'm going to hand this over to you, so maybe give the title of it, read it out, and then we can discuss when you're done.
Okay. This was written on a site called The Prose, and just as an introduction. And there are many challenges for writers that you can enter, some for prizes, some for kudos, whatever it is. This particular one was the winner took 300 coins, and coins are our currency. That's what we use to give to people that we think their stuff is really exceptional, or to, if you win a competition, or we can use it in the bookstore. We can, use it in many different aspects. This was a challenge that the person who created the challenge said, what does it mean to be fucked? So hence, pardon my language if anybody is offended, but the piece that I wrote was understandably graphic in its language because of the nature of the challenge. So this was the winning piece in that challenge, and it's called "Fuck You to All Our Customers." So it's a conversation. Thank you for waiting. Your call is very important. An agent will be with you momentarily. They repeated that message every 30 seconds, and I've been holding 35 minutes, which means I'd heard it 70 times by now. What a waste. Finally, there was a click, and then an actual human voice. Thank you for calling Medical Solutions. My name is Karen. How may I help you today? ID number 076555129. I'm calling about the prior authorization for the Gendomer, which you denied. Yes, sir. The plan only covers 1 pill a day. But my doctor says I need 2. He sent you the information. The cancer's growing. But we don't cover more than 1 pill. It's policy. Is there anything else I can help you with? I slammed down the receiver, feeling royally fucked. I just waited 40 minutes of the rest of my short life.
So first sort of question I have to ask about that piece, Miriam, was that around anything specifically? Because, okay, I mean, I'll give you a kind of reflection from when we over in the UK. I mean, you're obviously writing that about a world where paid medicine, and obviously that's a bit different over here. So was this something that's a personal reflection, or just a general kind of narrative on the state of America and how they deal with medical insurance and health?
This was very, very personal. I'm on a medication that I take 1 pill, 60 milligrams, once a day. My doctor thought it would be better if I took 1 pill, 30 milligrams, twice a day, so equaling 60 milligrams. He submitted the prescription, which was immediately denied by the insurance. I'm sorry, we don't do that. That's 2 pills. Yes, but it equals 60 milligrams. Yes, but that's 2 pills. We don't cover 2 pills. So we filed an exception. And, within 30 minutes, it came back, denied. Because that's 2 pills. We don't cover 2 pills. We only cover 1 pill. So this went on and on and on. Finally, I had to go back to taking 1 pill once a day. And at that point, I felt royally fucked. Because this was not the first time this had happened. I had been on another medication that the doctor tried to get me smaller doses because I have adverse effects to the medication. He thought it would lessen the effects if I could take smaller doses. But of course, the insurance won't cover that. So, yeah, I was very much in that mindset when I wrote the piece. And it's something that I've seen throughout the American medical or the insurance system that we have here, in that there are paper pushers determining who gets what and how much, instead of the doctor. The doctor knows best what the patient needs. not the insurance company. But the insurance company says, well, we have to make 2 pills instead of just 1. So you can take it all at once. That's our decision. And they do this for a lot of different people, a lot of different medications. It's just policy. So there were a lot of entries into that challenge, and there were 3 of us, first, second, third, and I won the top prize on that one. So I got a bunch of coins. And I was it was the first challenge that I had won after starting writing on the prose. So I was understandably excited.
Well, I think there's 2 reflections to be made there. One, and it's amazing how many times I hear this same repeating pattern, that creations made from the passion, and maybe in a very kind of very quick and just that very open, quick expression, are often pieces that do very well. I hear that commonly with artists and musicians and writers. So I think that's one thing. And I think that the thing about, I hear this reflection again, especially from people in your part of the world, and it's always that thing about people, from one side of one part of the landmass will look over to the other, and people in America look over here and think, oh, I'd love to have the NHS, and people over here look and go, well, man, you don't want our NHS, all this kind of thing. But what I think is fascinating about this, Miriam, it's one of the things when I speak to a lot of Americans, and I think it's true over here as well, isn't one of the problems in the whole of this loop that you've spoken about, where you're suffering at the end of it as a patient, isn't one of the biggest white elephants in this room is the way that the pharmaceutical industry have just grabbed hold of this whole thing we call medicine, and instead of it being about preventative or looking at other means, and we've discussed this before about along with migraines, about how there's other ways of looking at it, but it's almost like every doctor instantly wants to put pills on you, and it's almost like they are in league in some ways with the medical pharmaceutical industry. And it, like you said, the results of this are just human beings spat out the other end, which is perverse, seeing it spat the medical industry. I don't know what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, it's unfortunately there are many. I mean, it's great that there is an insurance system at all. I mean, I should start with that, that there's some way. But right now, with the current political climate, they are totally dismantling the healthcare system and are going to leave 24 million people uninsured, completely uninsured. They're taking away good parts of Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare is for the elderly and disabled, and Medicaid is for low-income people who would otherwise have no access to health care and who overload the emergency room. The emergency rooms in the area, because they don't have a primary care doctor, they don't have anybody to take care of them. So they get the flu or something, they end up in the emergency room, which just ends up costing everybody a whole lot of money and wasting a whole lot of time. If they had just been covered so that they could go to their doctor, get what they need, and then get better, we wouldn't have this crisis. But the current political climate is we are dismantling the healthcare policies that were in place because the current president doesn't like the previous president. So anything that the previous president does, he is making sure is destroyed. And if he hurts 24 million people in the process, so be it, because it doesn't affect him. And that's what it's all about. It doesn't line his pockets. It doesn't affect him. So everybody who's out on the street, oh, well, too bad. And this is his idea of making America great again, by denying insurance, by denying the basic necessities of life to a large percentage of the population. And I think the insurance industry is going along with that in many ways, in that they're charging enormous sums for some medications, that people can't possibly afford. And the insurance isn't even covering some of the basic medications for rheumatoid arthritis or asthma or epilepsy. drugs that are critical for somebody's health. And then when they do cover medication, it's just like I said in the piece I wrote, well, we only cover one pill. We don't cover two pills, even though the two pills add up to one pill. To them, it's like, well, I mean, that's one too many. You're taking too many pills, even though it's exactly the same. So that is where the piece came from. And yeah, there's a lot of personal anger and frustration with the system that pushed that one out there. I saw that challenge and I said, oh, I got to enter this. It was just right up what I was thinking at that time. So, yeah.
Well, I think a couple of thoughts on what you just said. Then what you did, that's very eloquent on what you just spoken upon. But I think that this is something we touched upon in previous conversations. But I think what you're seeing is this is one of the things about history. It swings from one side to the other side, and everything. Look, the new, like you said, quite eruditely, any new president will come in, and just that reaction, just because of the mass of the people they got behind them, and they're angry for whatever reason. That person feels justified to enact, like you said, all these, and it just both ways. I mean, it's both. The thing is, I'm old enough in my life to realize, I'm sure you are, Miriam, there isn't one side or the other. And I think this is the complex area we're getting down to. And I think it was spoken upon what you said. And I think this cracks down to the heart of the matter is that we are going to I've got to, at some point as a species, got to understand we've got to break away from these power structures or these overriding, understanding that a few people can run and control things, whether it's medication, whether it's health or anything else, and start to break it down to the individual. And I think this really sort of speaks upon what you were saying about how I think this is the only way that I think we're going to have to evolve is when we understand all this, because it's like I was trying to say about the whole thing about how we treat the ill or the people who we always treat the people when they're at the wrong end of things, and when they've got the cuts, when they've got the symptoms, when they're going through. It's like we should be more focused on about prevention and understanding. Look, what solution isn't building more hospitals or having. That's not the. I've always looked at this and thought it's not a sign of a great. Look, the sign of a great society isn't having people in hospital wings or medicated up. A sign of a healthy society is like, what's leading to this, and start to deal with the root causes. Now, that's a very difficult question, which goes back to what I was trying to say. No politician wants to do this because they just kick it into the long grass and say, hey, I don't care. It's all about the now. How many votes am I going to get now? What's the opinion polls saying right now? And I think that's a moment we've all got to grow up from. But that comes, again, from the individual, which is a very difficult thing because we'd have to get into echo chambers and everybody wants to sit in their little echo chamber and root for the rah-rah team. And all the time that we're giving up our almost like our power of ourselves to the team mentality, we slip further and further and further, and the results are what you speak about. And this is the real kind of waking up. It's like for want of a better word, it's that what the Matrix told about. It's that waking up moment when people go, look, I've only got myself, and I've got to do all in myself to prevent, to being like you said, from being oppressed, which is what you spoke upon so eruditely upon in that short little piece.
Yeah, the previous health plan was called the Affordable Care Act, or also known as Obamacare, and it had a lot of problems. There's no denying that. No matter which side of the fence you're on, it had a lot of problems. But you work within the system to fix the problems. You don't just totally destroy it, bulldoze it, and then say, okay, now what? If you don't have something to replace it with immediately, what's the point? And what happened is, in the vote, the Congress voted to destroy Obamacare, but keep portions of it for themselves. So Congress is covered, but not the people that they represent. And so here again, we've got a situation where the wealthy, the privileged, the representatives of our democracy don't have to worry about anything. They get paid, they get health care, they get all kinds of things. But the people, the constituents that they represent are sitting here going, how do I afford my next dose of this medication? I know I'm terribly sick, but I can't go see a doctor because I can't pay for it. I don't have insurance. And it just ends up in a cycle of more illness and more oppression and a society that does not value its own people. And that's where we're at right now. The society does not value its own people. There's a huge push now, grassroots movements that are springing up. It started the day of the president's inauguration. It has been continuing march after protest, after letter writing campaign. I've been part of it, trying to fight for everybody's rights, you know, and a society that works for the people. It's supposed to work for the founding fathers themselves indicated that government was for the people. And right now, it is not serving the people at all. It's just slashing everything, firing people right and left, because the president doesn't think that any of it is necessary. He's got a job. What does he care? He's a billionaire. What you know, if it doesn't line his pockets, then it can't be of any potential use. And we've got this terrible situation. And I don't know what the answer is other than to keep fighting. And we are fighting. The people are fighting back. And that is one really, really good thing that is coming out of this, is that the people are fighting. They are marching. They are calling Congress every day to voice their opinions. They are writing letters to their representatives saying, hey, you got to pay attention to this. You know, you need to look at what's happening to your state, your constituents, and do something to protect us. Not just yourselves, but your people. You're only there because we voted for you.
Exactly, Miriam. But I mean, I think this is kind of really, I think when you, like I was trying to, the nuts of when you break this down to is, I mean, I think this is the point of people. Maybe we're all, you know, we all get, when it breaks down to us all, we've got to, all of us realize, because I mean, there is no structure that works in that. I mean, I have dear friends. I lived in Venezuela, and look at what's going on there. Look at the chaos over that side of it.
Oh my God, yeah.
And this is what I'm trying to say. It's at what point do human beings realize that maybe all this whole idea of governments and structures and monopolies and corporations, and maybe this is just all remnants of dead people that wrote all this 100 years ago, and maybe we got to sort of, you know, like you said, instead of, you know, marching and protesting, maybe we'll just got to go, okay, look, how can we as individuals empower ourselves and make our community and people, because it's to make ourselves and our community strong, we need to be good people ourselves and full of, you know, truth. I mean, it's one of the things I wanted to talk to you tonight about just recognizing the truth in these days is hard enough. So I think if we can start to concentrate on ourselves, then we can build from that perspective outwards. I mean, I think bringing this back to medication, it's always fascinated me that we live in an age where, you know, mobile, you know, from when I was, we've talked about this before, when I was, you know, in the teenagers, you know, computers were a status symbol to, you know, which cost ridiculous amounts of money. You know, yes. It was like half a year's wage to have a computer in your house. Now everyone carries around a mobile phone with more power inside it than you know, the hash. Yes. So, and you think, well, okay, how come that phones, that, you know, all these companies and technology, how come that phones can go down exponentially in price to almost like they're being thrown away? But like you said, medication's going through the roof. All these monopolies, everything it monopolizes suddenly goes into this thing where prices go up. And you think, well, maybe what medication needs, like everything, it needs that whole decentralized attitude to it and say, look, can we just take all this back and break this down from the start, because it's ridiculous. We live in an age where a pill, someone can be refused it just over cost, because it shouldn't be that case. It's like, how come we can all get mobile phones, but we can't get pills? How does this work? How did this all go wrong? And I think the solutions we've got to go, and that's, I think, with it all, Miriam, it's you're seeing it all around the world. People are starting to go, okay, how can we do things for ourselves? How can we organize ourselves instead of just all the time? I feel this, instead of just relying on somebody else. It's one of the things, we're going through election right now over here, and I hear the same old stuff. It's just one politician will turn up, do the same old stuff, here talk that side, there talk that side, and then they all disappear and nothing changes. And it's like, and then 4 years down the line, it's all happening again. And it's kind of like, how many times have we got to go through this cycle to realize that the only things that's going to change inside ourselves is us. Like I said, like what's happening with technology. Technology is being not monopolized and has become really cheap. Our understanding, our knowledge, because it's gone through the internet, which hasn't been controlled and hasn't been monopolized, as exponentially raised our ability to connect and knowledge. And I think that just needs to go further and further and further, and I think it will do. I don't think it's gonna. I think that, for want of a better word, the genie is out the bottle, and I don't think any government, corporation, anyone, any power structure can put it back in. I think the genie.
I agree with you. Yes, absolutely. Technology is expanding, and there's such a great demand for it, but we need to look at our priorities. I mean, technology can be many things. It can be the fact that you and I, half a world across, apart from each other, are able to talk like this right now. That's a wonderful thing. It keeps the world connected. We learn about other people. We have a global community. But there's also a huge revolution in healthcare technology. But what I'm seeing, we had talked previously about migraines. And I'm looking at I attended the 2017 Migraine World Summit a couple weeks ago. And we're looking at some therapies that'll be available in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe. But you know what price tag that's going to come with? Who's going to be able to afford these new medications that can either prevent the migraines in the first place or abort them very quickly without a whole lot of side effects? When they come out, they're going to be astronomical, and the insurance companies are not going to cover them, or they'll cover a little portion of them. So you're shelling out a couple $1,000s a month, to not sit there in pain all day. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm seeing that, across the board, that a lot of good things are coming of technology, but then somebody comes in with the bottom line, and says, well, we won't make enough money if we don't charge a fortune. So we're going to charge a fortune. And, maybe 10 years from now, it'll come down in price. Well, people can't wait 10 years. They don't have 10 years to wait. Why should they waste 10 years of their life being in misery when there is something right on the market that can help them now? And it all comes down to the bottom line. It's always the bottom line. And I understand that companies need to make money, that, it keeps them in business and it keeps them developing new things. But they're forgetting who they're developing it for. We are the people that they are developing it for. We are the people who will embrace this technology, whether it be smartphones or medical technology or robotic prosthetics. I mean, there's a huge, do you remember a series called The $6 Million Man?
Oh, yeah.
And The Bionic Woman?
Mm-hmm.
They now have bionic arms. Mm-hmm. I've seen them in work, and people control them with their thoughts. Mm-hmm. And it is awesome. But can anybody afford them? No. So people go without. It's a magnificent advancement in computer technology and robotics, but it's unreachable for the majority of the people who need it.
Exactly, Miriam. But this is what I was trying to allude to with the idea of. That's why I specifically brought up something like mobile phones, because mobile phones is a perfect example of something that's been, for want of a better word, pure competition. It's been, like you said, this is one of the things that frustrates people all the while. We don't live in a system that's not rigged, because that's why we see bankers are never too rich to fail. Everything's too rich, this monopoly thing, and it's like, wait a minute. With mobile phones, that's what it's on. We see companies all over the world just competing with each other to make the cheapest, the best, that's going to give you the more of the edge. And I think, why don't we just do this with everything? Why doesn't? And I think it's just going to come. I think technology will break this through. I think we're living in these times, and we've spoken upon this before. I think we're literally in the moment where we're shedding our skin and we're becoming something completely different. And I think we're part of this is what you spoke on, that grassroots thing. It's that connection between people, and then these things happen. I'm saying these. As much as I see, the doom of everything, I think, and it says about the bottom line, and we're not going to be able to afford things. Well, hey, I mean, the same was said about computers, and we're now living in an age where,
yes.
So I think eventually, all we need to do, the reason that they can be like that, and they've got this mindset, comes down to, again, is because of these people who control a market, or they control a system, and they go, okay, we're monopolies inside that, so we can charge whatever we like, because in our, like you said, in 10 years down the line, we may make some profit. Well, that shouldn't be the case. I want to see competing ideas with medicine. I want to see like everything. I want to see true competition. I want to see someone come up with an idea. And this is what I love about science. Science was always, to me, this idea of you came up with a theory, then it can be tested by somebody else, and if it can be proven, then it works, and then we can replicate that, and with that, great. That's all the advances that come from, because people can replicate and find more efficient, cheaper ways to give us more. And we are, and this is one of the things that I think we should never forget, Miriam, is it's like, we are talking this in some ways in a very first world thing. I mean, wow, the age like you said, we live in, where, as much as it is, like, say, that we can we're looking at the edges of things. I mean, it's far better to be living now than it would be 100 years ago, 60 years, 40
yes.
years ago, 30 years ago.
Yes.
So I think the progression, that's what I'm trying to say, I think generally is in a good direction. My fear, especially where we overlap, is it's whether we get to that. And I think this is where it comes down to mindset, because one of the things I see, and I think is relates to technology, we've seen this great thing with technology that we're able to have this conversation, but yet we see, and I think it's like you were speaking upon, because everybody just escapes to echo chambers, only wants to hear what they want to do, the truth gets lost. And it's one of the things that I find really, really frustrating with what's gone on in the last 6 months with the election in your part of the world. It's just that everybody's just retreated to corners. It's like, where's all the conversations gone? And the only way we're going to advance, I would argue, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts on, is from conversations, and like I said, that scientific point of view of, like, okay, you bring something, I bring something, let's all discuss this, and let's put our heads together, bang heads together forward, and move forward, rather than this retreat. And this is one of the things I found with the internet. Like you said, it's got all the great things, but it's also given power to people to sit on Twitter and just like I say, that's why we live in a world where everything is almost subjective. We don't know what the news is anymore. We don't know what journalism anymore. Everything is just, and what we need in this world where we've got all these people just screaming and shouting from each end of the spectrum, we need to sit down and have some conversations. And I think if we don't do that, I think we could retreat. And this is what I think the doom side of things. This is where I think we could hit the same loop as we've done in history. I mean, I live in Europe, and I think we could hit the same loop, and we could end up in very dark places if we don't end up talking to each other, and we just start making, like everything is, it's the other. We can't talk to them. We can't talk to that person. How dare they have an idea that may change my idea? And I thought the whole point of being scientific and rational and enlightened was to be faced with ideas that you don't want to hear, faced with theories you don't want to hear, or if you've got an idea, strip it right down and understand where is that idea from. But that all seems to be lost in this whole confusing world where everyone just gets into their microphones and shouts on Twitter and Facebook.
Not entirely. Not, you can't see it. I'm wearing a T-shirt. It says, "I am a force for science." And I got this the day before the March for Science down on the mall. There were, the main march was in DC, but there were over 500 marches around the world on that day. It was held on Earth Day, but they decided to do the March for Science on the same day. And in the week leading up to it, I did several workshops on communication of science to the layperson, to the students, to the teachers. How do we communicate the science and the importance of science? Because, you know, there's been a huge threat that all the science budgets are going to get cut. Very fortunately, we emerged relatively unscathed from that, which was a huge victory. But there's still the problem that, you know, people don't know the science, they don't understand it, they don't understand the importance of teaching the kids science, of learning science, of becoming a scientist, what that even means. What does it mean to be a scientist? You know, what is it that you do, and how is it relevant to the world at large? And it is so relevant. It explains all aspects of the world around us, whether you're dealing with the physical laws that describe how you build a car so that it doesn't crash the moment you turn on the ignition, to, you know, new medical advances, to looking at the planet objectively and saying, okay, do we have a problem or do we not? What can we test? What can we not? What is proven? What still has to be proven? And understanding that science is a process. It is a process. It is not just a one-time thing. You know, you come up with an idea, an hypothesis, and then you go about trying to prove the hypothesis. You gather the data, you analyze the data, you come to a conclusion. But if somebody else can't replicate the process, then what is the value of the research? None. So we haven't proven that yet. So there is no such thing as a truth in science. There's only, when we talk about a law, like the law of thermodynamics or something, the law is merely an hypothesis that has been tested so many times and achieved the same result that we believe it to be true. But somebody could always come along and prove it wrong. That's why it's important to keep the dialogue open, to be open to new ideas, thinking outside the box. How can we prove this? How can we disprove this? What do we need in order to make an informed decision? Because that's been so much of the controversy that's been going on around here in the last 2 years has been over, you know, not understanding what the basis of the conversation is, and what it means to have a meaningful conversation about what is proven, what is not, and how we go about determining which of the two is more relevant. So, you know, I'm trying. I joined the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and I'm trying through them, although I'm no longer practicing as a scientist, I am trying to aid as a conduit through my writing and my teaching, to be a conduit from the scientific knowledge to the general public, and saying, okay, this is what you got, and this is what we need to do, and this is what it all means, in language that's not dumbed down, because that's just insulting the intelligence of the public. We don't want to dumb down the information. We want to make it intelligible so that people understand the value of what's being done or not being done. You know, there's two sides of the coin there. We need to understand both sides of it. And we need to be realistic in our expectations for what comes out of an experiment or a series of experiments. And we need to be realistic about what the data show. But by turning our heads the other way and saying, well, I don't see it. I mean, that's a farce. And that's a lot of what's happening with the Environmental Protection Agency. No, we don't see global warming. I mean, despite overwhelming evidence that the planet is warming, the ice shelves in the Antarctic and the Arctic that are cleaving off, kilometer wide swaths of ice that are floating out to sea. I mean, something is going on. We need to look at that more intensely, not turn a blind eye and say, well, I don't see it happening. So there's a lot of that. I know I get very impassioned about this, but I am very passionate about it because I think this is extremely important. It impacts our daily lives in every sense, whether it be the smartphones, the climate, medical advances, robotics, you name it. I mean, even though we don't have a practical application, we're doing what's called basic research. That means science for its own sake. Oh, let's learn about this because, gee, it would be interesting. Maybe down the line we'll find something applicable for it and make a widget that'll help. But right now, it's just the knowledge that is important because that's where the ideas start that eventually do trickle down to the practical application. And people need to understand what this all means. And too many people are either not understanding or are ignoring the facts in front of them or are being told that the facts are irrelevant and are believing what they're told because they don't have the basis on which to judge it for themselves. Hence the need for conduits, communicators, who can bring the two sides together and say, okay, this is what we have, and this is what you need to know, and this is what we need to do moving forward. And so that's right now, that's a large part of where my mind is at, thinking about, what I can do to help make this more intelligible to the public and of greater importance to our politicians and our educators and the people who will raise the next generation of scientists or whatever to understand the world around them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I could, I feel like I wanted to say, but I mean, I think one of the heart of what you've spoken upon there is that search for the truth, and I think this is, I think, kind of the root of really where we are in our, particularly my world, my culture, and your culture is almost to speak the truth now. You can. I understand completely why people don't want to say the truth, because it's to put your head above the sand and speak the truth. You are going to. It's like, you can't put light into darkness about darkness not wanting to be around. That's the whole point. So sometimes you're going to speak, like you say, you're going to speak truth, and it is going to upset people. But that's the role of people, of truth is to speak the truth. But you can understand that, because if you offend certain people, okay, like you say, you may get a lot of blowback and you're pushed to the outside. But a lot of this, you could be saying a lot of things that that would be offensive. You could end up being thrown in a cage, or you could be had up for hate crimes, or you could be had some sort of fatwa or some sort of religious thing put on top of your head. Now, I think this is one of the things I think, like you said, and I think this is where it breaks down to the individuals. And I think you're right. We need people to stand up and be the conduits, but equally, it breaks down to us all to look at the truth, because it's one of the things I find really. I'll tell you, when you talk about being passionate, I mean, my reflection over here in Europe, Miriam, is it's one of the things that. And I think, as I say, it breaks down to what I said before, is that we've become so over here, we don't want to talk about the truth of anything. And by not speaking upon the truth, the concept, like you said, is the idea of ostrich in the head, and it'll never in the sand. Don't worry about it. It'll never happen in my lifetime, or as long as it's not happening to me, it doesn't affect me. But these things never go away, and it's all that happens is it just brews and brews and brews and brews, and then it comes out. And like you say, you can argue that's what happened in Trump. That's what's happening across Europe right now. If you suppress and you don't tell the truth and you don't speak the truth, and sometimes, like I say, it's difficult because sometimes you've got to go and pop some people's beliefs, and let's be truthful about it. It's what we went through in the separation of the church and state. It's what we need to go through. What you can argue a lot of the world needs to go through, because people, when they don't speak upon the truth, and this is the reflection I say, I can understand, like I say, why people don't want to speak it. But if people don't speak the truth, then truth doesn't happen. And before you know it, and I jest you not, and I thought I would never live in the world. And I was talking to someone, and I actually had to say to the person, I said, please, you're not just trolling me. You are actually you actually do want to have this actual discussion. And this person was adamant about it, and I've known this person for a long time. They just started discussing flat Earth theory to me, and I was like,
"Oh my God!"
Yeah, but that's the level we're getting to, because if we don't hear truths, and all truths are the same, and everything's subjective, then it's like, well, hey. And then I actually said to this person, "Are you honestly?" And they're like, "Yeah, but it's." And you said to them, "Well, about all the proofs I can say to you, no, it's all fake. It's all new. It's all been." And it's like, oh, here we go. And this is what I'm saying. Everything just gets thrown out. The truth gets thrown out in this subjective world, and that's what I mean. We need the scientists. We need the authors. We need the artists. We need everybody to stand up and say, look, what is true, and what can we, like you said, this is the pursuit of science. What can we agree on? What can be replicated? But it needs people, and I'm like you, man. I get really passionate about it, because the thing that frustrates me most about it, everybody just says, oh, well, that person over there is going to sort it out. That person over there is going to sort it out. And while everybody's doing this, we just descend into this chaotic mass of fake news and flat Earth theories, and this, that, and the other. And you think, what's going on?
I saw something. It was on Facebook the other day, but it said, I was waiting until somebody sorted it out, and then I realized I was somebody. So there you go. You have to take the responsibility. And one of the great things about being a writer is that, and especially a science fiction writer, is that I have the luxury of examining where we're at, where we're going, what we're doing, the implications, not just today, but maybe 200 years in the future. I've set my story. What are the implications of today's events going to do for 200 years in the future? And I love working in that genre, because it gives me license to think and be creative. One of the other things I wrote on the prose, which won the Other World Revolution Challenge, was called Home Soil. And it was about, the challenge was you had to write about a colony rebelling against Earth. And it was in order to promote this author's new book he had coming out that dealt with a revolution. So he was, getting people involved and excited for the release by doing this challenge, and certainly worked with me. I love his books now. But, it got me thinking, okay, well, we've got fourth generation Martians. What are they going to be like? Well, gee, what were colonies like here in America when they separated from England? And I could see the same thing happening all over again. You've got people living apart. You've got people with different ideas. You've got people with different sensibilities, different types of government, different social structures. They're not going to want to be a part of Earth anymore. They're going to want to be a unified, independent Mars. And, so we have a lot of that playing out, so fine, we splinter into a lot of groups right now, but you splinter off into so many different groups. Extrapolate. What's going to happen when you're all splintered and nobody's together, say 50 years from now, 100 years from now? Where are we going to be? We are certainly not going to be headed on a path toward enlightenment or truth, or we're just going to be a bunch of factions yelling at each other over things we don't even understand where they came from because we don't remember. It's been too long, but we've held on to them with such ferocity that, you know, they're like in our makeup, in our social circles, that, you know, oh, we have to believe this because somebody back when believed in it, and it was right. It was right for them, so it's right for us. You know, I was talking with somebody the other day about our Constitution. You know, the founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, envisioned it as a living document. They had a vision for the country, but they were smart enough to recognize that 200 years in the future, people aren't going to have the same needs. They didn't know what the needs were going to be, but there should be an ability to amend the Constitution to fit the changing needs of the times. And, you know, that's an important thing to realize. You don't just hang on to it for hanging on to its sake. Look at your society, determine what it needs, and fix the problems so that we can be more unified, we can be more productive, we can be more of a compassionate people. And when I say people, I mean all of the people of Earth. All of us. You know, we should be a united planet. Not to say that we shouldn't have different cultures or different religions. You know, yes, we are individuals to a very large extent, but we should be able to recognize the differences and not be frightened of them. Not do the us versus them. Because when you do that, you are doomed. You are doomed. And as the very famous, I don't know who said it, but those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And I think we are in a situation, certainly in this country, where we are doomed to repeat some of the greatest atrocities of the past, even 100 years. Make it 100 years. And it is frightening to be living at a time where that is not only possible, but it's probable. This is where we are heading because we are doing the us versus them. We are doing the flat earth theory because somebody thought it was a good idea, but doesn't know enough about the science to think about the proof that yes, it is flat, no, it is not flat, and what that means. And it's not just flat earth. I mean, it's anything. It's understanding the world around you from any perspective. No matter what field it is, you need to look at it in a way that reflects the needs of the people, the needs of the times, and what it will mean for future generations.
Exactly, Miriam. And I think this is the point I think about, like you say, it's the whole point about science and the truth and the search for that was the whole point. It didn't matter. I mean, it's just one of the things I think I found fascinating that, you know, I mean, go back to the flat Earth one. That, you know, just the idea of the flat Earth. That was what they literally killed Copernicus over this. You know, we had a whole Middle Ages.
Yeah.
We had this whole battle a long time ago, and that's what I'm saying. The whole point of this, why that battle of ideas won, and why we did have the Enlightenment, and why we are to the point where we are right now, was because of the idea that, okay, I don't care whether you know. I think this is one of the things that we can all agree on. I think most people are like, hey, let's live and let live. I don't care if you want to believe in some elephant with 16 trunks and his name is Vishnu, or you believe, that doesn't really matter to me. But if you're trying to come to me and say because my Vishnu God, or because my Allah God, or because my Jesus God says this, that the world was built in 7 days, that you've all got to fall to the knee of this, no, I haven't got to. That's what truth did. That's what the Enlightenment said, though. You can have any beliefs you like, but they've got to, 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's exactly what George Orwell talked about. 2 plus 2 does not equal 5. And that's the whole point about any religion, doctrine, karma, any corporation, any government. They've all got to bend to the knee of actual reality and the truth. Because to say you're above that is to put yourself above and elevate the stuff above human beings. And none of us are in that position, because the truth of all of us, this is what finds me fascinating. It brings me back to it was my parting words to my guy who was talking about the flat earth. I said, dude, you're fascinated. You're spending all your energy into this flat earth thing. The world, the universe, just go and dig a 1 foot square outside your garden and just study that. That will blow your mind than all the conspiracies and about there's a group of 6 men that sit in a room with cigars and decide that the earth is flat. And come on, people, I mean, there's so much joy in this short little time we have as human beings. And that's what I think we need to do. We need to understand that the search for truth, and I don't care that's what I said before, question yourself. If you've got an idea in your head, and I've done this where I've gone, where have I got that idea from? And this doesn't tell me this, and this is truth. And that's a scientific path. And I think that needs to come more and more and more, where we've got to be stand up and, like I say, not be afraid to say to people, I don't care what you believe. I'm not against you. Whatever you want to believe and whatever you want to think and whatever, line, party, whatever you want to believe in. But hey, this is the truth. The sun rises, the sun falls. These are common things that a lot of people have got to. That's why there is. I mean, it's one of the things about the world we live in. Why do we have the sciences, the arts? They're all on the common one, philosophy. They're there to speak the truth. And that's why we had a whole culture that went back so many thousands of years that realized that. And I personally think that what we're seeing right now, and I've said this before, I think we are living in a renaissance. And I think we hear a lot of doom, and we just as it would have been in the Middle Ages, you would have seen these big power structures like the Catholic Church trying to repress everything, but not at the time realizing, like, wow, look at what we're going through. And I do think we're going through it right now. And I think what we're seeing, this is my kind of maybe my, to round this sort of conversation off about everything, is just generally to say, I think what we're seeing now are these, with Trump and all these, these people like this, we're just seeing the last throes of this death gasp of a system that's just coming to its end. And I think we are living in the Renaissance. And I think, like you were saying about the technology and about how we're just generally pushing through, we're living in marvelous days. And I think this is one of the bottom lines I want to go to, because as much as we can sit there and we're quite rightly can get frustrated and look around us, but hey, I mean, we're like I said before, we're in far better world than we were 50 years ago, and we and I would rather right now live where I am right now than some parts of the world, and
yes,
and it's like I always try and remind people, like, every day 300,000 people on this day on this planet are connected to electricity. Every day 150,000 people are brought out of poverty. These are things that are not spoken upon, but this is an amazing thing that we're doing as human beings like never before. And that's what I mean about we mustn't just get stuck in echo chambers where we look on negative side of things, because there are unbelievable things happening right now. We are lifting ourselves as a species out of poverty and we're bringing ourselves into an enlightenment, and we've got more knowledge at our fingertips than we've never had at any point in our civilization before. And I think these are really important things to hold on to cling on to and remember in the times when we hear about all the bad things, that as much as there is negative stuff going on, there's so much great stuff going on. And that's why I try to wake up people and say, look, hey, the search for truth, the search for everything, this is the greatest things. These are the greatest days to live in. And right now we can enjoy it. And that's what I think you're saying about, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I put the rally call out to people who write and the creators. Don't be bold. Be bold. Like you said, well, if we can't be bold, then we might as well just all curl up and die.
Yeah. I believe that. I mean, I try every day to put something out there. I mean, some of it is better than others, but a lot of what I'm thinking, a lot of what I feel, I do feel the pain and the sadness of the parts of the world that are suffering terribly. I don't know how I can help at this point. I wasn't even able to attend the March for Science because I did have to teach that day, but I had a massive migraine and, couldn't get there. So what can I do to correct the civil war in Sudan, for example? I don't know, but all I can do is what I know how to do. I can write, I can talk, I can communicate, I can do interviews like this, and I can share my passions, my views with other people, and hope that I can share some of that enthusiasm and that hope that things will get better if we, as a species, come together and work together to make it so. We have to be in this together. We can't be us and them. We have to be together. And part of that is education. Part of that is compassion. Part of that is just simple understanding of human nature. We have to be aware and self-aware. And from that, we will grow a civilization worthy to survive. And I think that's really the bottom line of what we're talking about. We want to be a species not just that survives, but is worthy of survival. And I'd like to think that we're all part of that we are trying in our own individual, unique ways to make that so.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think I think that's honestly that's like a piece of artwork. When you do your last brushstroke, I can't think of anything more to say. I think that you've just perfectly, captured that perfectly. Now, before we do just wrap this up, and I just wanted to say, because I think it's fascinating that one of the things about being a writer, you do see a whole different side of it, and I think one of the things about I'll recommend people, right now, and I'll put the links up. But your prose on the on the prose is you see a whole different side of your nature. And I mean, some of it, to be honest, and I'll be very honest with you, it's very dark. I mean,
It's very dark.
I was
I'm
quite
not known
shocked.
for writing happy pieces.
No. That's what I mean. It comes from someone who comes across as quite good natured, we're all happy as But yeah. So again, again, for people listening, where can they find that? Because there's quite a few places they can find, particularly your writing, but we've spoken on tonight, but they can find that. So maybe just give a few, places where people can sort of find you and follow them, and if they've been fascinated by what you've spoken on tonight and they wanted to read it. Where can they find that?
Well, a lot of my writing I'm doing these days on the prose, which is a huge international community of writers of all different backgrounds and ages and cultures and whatever, who share a passion of writing and of sharing that writing. So I'm at Ruff Miriam on the prose, and it's just theprose.com. And you can, if you do a search on the author, you can find what they've written. I do have several hundred posts up there, but I had given you some links of some of the ones that I thought might be more enjoyable for the readers. I'm writing, I still do the blog for Ace Reader. So that comes out every Tuesday. And if you go to acereader.com, and click on blog, you'll find the current topic, and we try and cover education, reading, all different kinds of things related to those topics. And I'm on Facebook, Twitter. I love to connect with people. So anybody interested in connecting with me, absolutely. drop me a line and I'll be happy to talk.
Well, perfect. Well, as ever, it's been an insightful conversation. And do you know, with Miriam, as always, it's like all great conversations, I'm left with more conversations. My mind's, my mind's firing me in all sorts of directions. So I think that's always a good sign of a conversation. So I just want to say thank you very much for giving me your time this afternoon. And well, all the way from over here in beautiful sunny Scotland to all over there in the good old America, I want to say life is people.